Oh, hello. Fancy seeing you here on a Monday morning, but glad you could join us. Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week we will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their businesses to success in an ever-competitive business climate. So pour yourself a hot cup and enjoy the show. Welcome to another episode of Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Today I have on Nikita Morell. She is a copywriter and marketing strategist for architects. She's on a mission to fight archi-babble and help architects win more and better clients by using the right words. Welcome to the show today, Nikita.
Thank you, Lance, for having me.
Yeah. Everybody, so obviously you have a slight accent. I'm talking to you across the world right now. Before we get into it, why don't you unpeel for us and everybody who are you and how did you get into being a copywriter and marketing strategist, and then where are you located?
Sure. So, well, I'll start off. I'm in Sydney, Australia, so down under. And yeah, so I mean, it's been a bit of a windy journey for me, but I started off in brand and marketing management. So I've got a good solid understanding of that, worked for brands like L'Oreal, and then moved, I just fell in love with design. So I would go to restaurants instead of focusing on the food. I was looking at the light fittings and that. And so just as a hobby, I took up an interior design diploma. And from there, I thought, how can I work for architects with the skills I have? So I worked for a architecture publishing magazine. And then from there, I thought, again, I want to really know what it's like to work inside an architecture firm. So I worked in-house as a marketing communications manager and set up their whole department. And then the next logical step was saying, well, I could be doing this for so many more firms. And that's when I took the leap to starting my own consultancy practice. And yeah, as you said, I've been doing copywriting and marketing strategy just for architects. Yes.
That is interesting. Yeah, so there are a lot of folks out there doing what you do, doing the copywriting and the marketing for architects in the way that you do it, or have you carved out like a completely unique niche for yourself?
There are a lot of people doing similar things to me, it could be business coaching or social media for architects, but I'm yet to meet someone who's solely doing copywriting. Yeah. Very cool.
Very cool. Tell us about, you studied, I think you said 663 different architecture websites. What did that study tell you? What did it teach you about architects?
Yeah, I mean, the first reason why I started it was I just kept going onto architecture websites and they all looked the same. Number one, there wasn't missing any words. It was just kind of a portfolio or a brochure website. So I thought, I'm going to just study architecture websites and see what they have in common, what's different, and more importantly, what can be fixed. And looking outside into other industries as well, so kind of looking outside the architecture world. So yes, I studied 663, probably more, architecture websites. And that study, it was just me going through and doing almost an audit. So starting at the homepage and finishing right at that forgotten contact page, which is very important. And just, like taking notes and recording videos. And then what I did was I compiled all my research into a bit of a challenge for myself. So over 30 days, I recorded one video focusing on one fix. So, for example, it could have been the bio or, homepage taglines. And then across 30 days, I made a video for each day and just kind of drip fed it. And they're sitting on my website now. So, but just short little videos of me kind of critiquing people's websites.
So that seems to be a common theme that I hear all the time, is that there's not enough words, and they all look the same, and what's interesting about that is a lot of architects like to complain that we commoditize ourselves, or that not that we do it, but that places like HomeAdvisor.com or Yelp, any kind of those services that are lead generating services, they end up commoditizing the architecture service and industry. But it seems like that's what their websites are doing already, is that they all look the same, therefore they're kind of this commodity.
So how do you recommend when you start working with somebody, is that the first thing you look at is their website, and then you are the one that's writing all of their content and everything for them? How does that work?
So it starts off even one step before. So I always run like a discovery session. So and in that session, it's more like looking at, number one is who their ideal client is. And, a lot of architecture firms say, we work for everyone, we're full service, multidisciplinary, we do everything. So, you've probably heard it before, but it's about, I take the viewpoint that it's risky, but it is going to pay well over your dividend, is really focusing on one niche client. So it's my job, I guess, to go in there and say, who is that one client that you would clone? Who is that one client that you would just have over and over again? And then we pick apart that. And then the next step is looking and saying, okay, well, what kind of language and words resonates with that one client? Because if you can match those two things together and, yes, put it on your website, it means that you're going to attract more of those clients. And not only that, you're going to actually connect with them. And not just, this word connect and storytelling, it gets thrown around a lot, but it's like really connecting with them in a meaningful way, and looking and asking yourself, have they worked with an architect before? Because if the answer is no, then your language is going to have to be a lot different to if they've already worked with architects before. Property developers, the language you use with them is going to be very different to the way you would speak to a residential homeowner who's looking to find an architect to, do a renovation. So it's about finding that right, not only the right words, but the right language. And that is a step that a lot of websites kind of miss completely because the focus is on their projects. And, a lot of architects say their work speaks for themselves, which, work speaks for itself, which I do not believe in. I think you need words and images to work together.
Why don't they speak for themselves? If I said prove it to me.
Well, okay, think of it this way. So if I show you a photo, in your head, you're going to come at it with different stories that are held in your head. You're going to be looking at different things. Whereas if I tell you, words can help you direct your focus and direct your attention on one thing. So you could be looking at this photo going, that's a nice artistic sculpture in the foreground. Whereas what I'm trying to tell you with that image is look at that building. And I think words help you give the context and, as I said, help direct your attention to what matters. And also studies have shown that when people are given lots of images, they can just scroll through. But if you add words and the words tell a story or connect you emotionally, you're far more, the increased rate of remembering that project and remembering what you felt is increased.
Interesting. So if words matter for architects, then what do you have? Just how does that work then? Are you looking at a specific project with them, and then is there like a questionnaire you're giving them, or how are you pulling the story out of these architects, or are you actually even contacting the client sometimes? Because I would, if the third party came into my firm and then they said, hey, we're going to write all these stories, my first question is, how are you going to write these stories about these projects? Is it a collaborative process? Yeah,
100%. And exactly right. So it always starts, I actually prefer starting with interviewing if the client lets me, interviewing past clients. So I normally interview around, depends on how many projects they've done, but 3 to 5 interviews, and that is done either, with an email questionnaire, or I prefer to have a phone conversation because I think you can get a little bit more out of that. And then the second step is sitting down with the client. Again, I think I've got over, I think it's 30 questions that I send to the client, and then we set up a call and we talk through that. And what I find is that a lot of architects, sometimes they're writing about their projects well after they've been completed. So it's about triggering, why they chose a specific material, or, it's really trying to get those details out. And that's the kind of misalignment I find, the disconnect, is that architects have all these ideas in their head, but sometimes they find it hard to actually put it into words that would resonate with ideal clients.
How do you measure the success then, or is there some kind of metric? Is it just simple gross sales that you guys are looking at, and how you maybe showing new clients and proving to them, maybe you don't even have to, about the effectiveness of what you're doing for them?
Yeah, look, that's a really good question, and it is very hard in terms of to actually get hard data and metrics. With me, all the people I work with, I do touch base that's just part of my, I guess, my process is I like to touch base, 6 to 12 months again, just after I've written, whether it's project descriptions or about page, and kind of say, has this had any effect? And a lot of the times, they've said, I think the biggest thing is they start to attract new types of clients or more focused, and they start to attract more of the clients that they want to have. So rather than people ringing and picking their brain, and, going to the next architect, is that they find that kind of attracting and then converting grows a lot more. And that makes sense because, I go through their website and I make sure that their call to action speak directly to their ideal client, their contact page. Everything works in a way that it's taking that, ideal client throughout the journey.
Are you then taking their existing websites and are you marking them up in like a piece of software and then handing that over to the web designer, or are you doing that piece too?
Yeah, so I do website audits, so it's exactly that. So I would do a kick-off call, and then I'll make a video recording, and that usually goes for 45 minutes to an hour, and it's picking apart, just things that they can, like weak spots in their website, what they can improve, and then all the way through. But if I find that, it's almost better if they kind of hit reset, then I have a collaborative network in which I can do the whole thing from start to finish. So it just depends on, I guess, the client and what their needs are.
Tell me about your framework that you've created. It's called, I think you said it was Architect's Blueprint for Becoming Unforgettable.
Yeah. So I found, I was doing these discovery sessions and I was explaining to a lot of architects, why marketing is so important. And I felt that a lot of my words were getting lost. And I know that architects are quite visual creatures. So I decided to make a framework. So pretty much it stands for this. It's pretty much saying if you want to be remembered, and you forget that the competition is fierce, you're not just competing against other architects. Right now you're competing against building designers and draftspeople and builders and, your friend who thinks that they're an architect. But it's about doing two things. You have to stand out. So that's things like your logo, your brand identity, your branding, so that kind of visual piece. And then you've got to stand for something. And by that, I mean, it's just really having one thing that you want to be known for. So, some people call it your differentiation or whatever you call it, but it's just that one thing. So it doesn't have to be your typology. It doesn't have to be the type of architecture you do, but it could be your process, or it could be your customer service or your design philosophy, or that you're really into sustainability or technology, whatever it is, that you stand for something. And then what happens is when you stand out and stand for something, when they cross over, what you get is this visible expertise. So all of a sudden you're being seen by your ideal clients, but you're also being held as the expert. And, with all of us, with anything we do, we want to be served by, the expert. And that's when you can start commanding premium fees. You just think about that analogy of you go to the GP or the specialist, you expect to pay more for a knee specialist than you would if you just go to your local doctor. So it's about commanding more. And it's also about, that power play. So all of a sudden, instead of becoming the order taker, you become that expert advisor. So yeah, that's just what that framework is, just explaining those two things that you have to have, in order to kind of, be remembered.
Yeah. How are you getting most of your clients? Are you just kind of scouring the web looking for crappy architect websites, or is it referrals, or all of the above? How are people finding you right now?
Right now, it goes through phases. In the beginning, when I first started my business, I was cold pitching. I would do free website audits and say, look, these are some things you could do. Whereas now, I guess I've got to that stage where I'm doing a lot of kind of thought and opinion pieces on LinkedIn. Often get I put up a post this week because I got a few trollish negative DMs thrown at me, and I'm starting to get I get backlash, and I write controversial kind of posts. But LinkedIn at the moment is where I'm finding a lot of people are resonating with my message and getting in touch. So that's working for me now.
Can you give us an example of one of those where they reacted in a bad way?
Yeah, so last week or 2 weeks ago, I wrote about architects, how I was sick and tired of hearing them say that they were undervalued and, overworked. And, it blew up. I was quite surprised overnight. I'm in Sydney, so I woke up, my phone had gone off. But I guess the backlash, I was just saying, look, if you keep not communicating how you work and your process behind what you're doing, and then you present clients with a drawing, of course they're going to turn around and say, hey, can you just redraw this tonight? And so what I was trying to say is that the value, what you do, is you need to communicate how you do it, because that's the piece that's missing. And even the what you do, a lot of people assume, architects assume that everyone knows what architects do. And even me as a non-architect, I don't even in any way assume that I know exactly what you guys do. So it's also a learning process for me, because I'm not an insider, but I'm bringing my skill set to the architecture industry. So yeah, that was the post.
I don't know why they think that either. And I'm an architect, and I'm not offended at all by what you're saying, because I think you're spot on. I have this, actually our last episode on Friday, I believe we talked about that, is that I don't know where we get this idea that everybody knows what we're doing, but because they don't. There's, for the most part, a lot of times it's wealthy people that only hire architects. That's just the way it works, especially for custom houses. Like, you have to have a lot of capital in order to be able to build a house, especially in the States with all the regulations. So yeah, I think a healthy reminder of that, and I would encourage you, not that you maybe need it, but just in case you had any doubts, like, no, you keep saying that stuff. Keep picking that scab, because I think the profession needs it badly, because otherwise they're going to continue with this self-devaluation. I think that's where it comes from. I think a lot of it has to do with that, and I think a lot of it has also, the builders have kind of crept into sort of taking over that architect role too. You already kind of mentioned that, even your friend thinks they're an architect or whatever. So we're really good at design, but marketing and stuff like that is a problem for sure. So very cool. I would encourage anybody who's listening, if they're interested, to get in touch with you. Where can people follow you, and how do they get in touch with you if they're interested in leveraging you for your services?
Sure. So I think the best thing is to hop onto my website and sign up to my email address, because I send a lot of my good stuff, like free templates and that, all through that address. And I just opened up the Architect's Workshop as well. So that's selling toolkits to help architects write, and especially, the smaller guys that don't have big budgets to hire a marketing agency or a copywriter. That's there for you as well. So yeah, they're the two kind of places I'm usually hanging out in virtually.
Yeah, very good. Well, thanks so much for getting in touch with me and being on the show today, Nikita. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me. Thanks, Lance.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on the iTunes app. Tip your barista, and we'll see you next week for more Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm.